The hidden treasure of Whitestone Manor. The sea mist rolled across the Whitestone cliffs like a pale tide of its own, softening the world into silver edges and gentle echoes. Lamps glimmered along the village lanes. Boat masts tipped their hats to the wind. Beyond the church spire, Whitestone Manor rose from the hill with the quiet authority of age. Weathered stone mullioned windows, chimneys like sentinels. I arrived at the oak door as the chapel bell struck 8. Lady Whitestone opened it herself, a candle in hand, her features illuminated as if she stood in a portrait. "You are kind to come," she said. "I hope you will find our puzzle worth the trouble." She stepped aside, and a draft carried the faint scent of salt and beeswax. The hall was a measured grandeur, a tiled floor, portraits in heavy frames, a lantern that once guided her great-grandfather over fog-bound shoals. "The Whitestones," she said, noticing my glance. "Sailors, bankers, a poet or two, and one magistrate. But there is something else they left behind, if the stories are true." She led me to the library, lined floor to ceiling with books. The hearth glowed faintly, and on the table lay a map not of the coast but of the manor itself. Corridors and rooms were marked in tidy hand, small symbols dotting the margins. "My grandmother often said my grandfather hid something here during unsettled times," she explained. "Jewels, letters, perhaps old coins, meant for a museum." It became legend. Then last month, roofers found this under a beam. A compass rose decorated the sketch. Around the library, a circle. At the north wing, a square. Near the courtyard, a tree. Beside the fireplace symbol, a faint upward arrow. "We tried the north wing," she said. "There's a chamber with a stubborn door. The old key would not turn. Briggs the steward called a locksmith. When the door opened, we found only carvings, a circle with an arrow pointing back to the library. Ellen, the housekeeper, entered with tea and shortbread. "You'll want the lamp on the tall shelf, my lady," she advised. "The draft behind the bookcases makes the others flicker." Lady Whitestone lifted the brass lamp, smiling. "Even the house joins the game." We searched the shelves. I climbed the ladder. Ellen steadied it. A thin volume rattled when I touched it. Inside its cover was another sketch, sharper than the first. The library again, with a dotted line from fireplace to cornice. "Someone wanted this found," I said, "but not as..." At the hearth, the stones above the grate showed soot higher than expected. I pressed at the seam. A brick clicked inward, and a section of paneling shifted. Cold air whispered from behind. Briggs appeared in the doorway. "Calm as ever." "I heard the sound," he said. "Best to be nearby." We raised the lamp. A stair descended into the wall. Lady Whitestone insisted no one go alone. Ellen led, fearless, and we followed single file. At the bottom lay a small landing. On the floor sat a canvas-wrapped parcel, tied with brittle cord. We carried it to the library table. Inside was a wooden case banded with iron, the lid marked with a simple W. The latch had been held shut with a bent nail. Briggs freed it gently. Inside were letters tied with ribbon, receipts, and a list in neat columns. Beneath, a cloth bundle held coins dulled by time, pearls like moonlight, a garnet brooch, and a signet ring with the Whitestone W entwined with an anchor. Ellen gasped softly. "He really did it." He tucked them away like winter apples. Lady Whitestone opened one letter. "He writes of unrest and bargains pressed too quickly. He says the manor will carry us if we remember not to count safety in coin alone." She looked up, eyes bright. "This is more than treasure." Tucked in the corner was a card with a compass rose and a small shaded square. "Another clue." Lady Whitestone smiled like her portrait come alive. "Then we shall keep going. But after tea." And so part 1 ended not with trumpets, but with cups set on saucers, coins stacked in neat piles, and the fog pressing at the windows, curious to know what would be found next. The fog held steady through the night, soft as wool along the windows of Whitestone Manor. Yet within the library, the air had changed. The opened case on the table seemed to breathe, Its letters, coins, and pearls, whispering of journeys, paused too long. The new clue card with a compass rose and a shaded square waited like a question too polite to press itself aloud. Lady Whitestone studied it, the lamplight warming her thoughtful features. "The shaded square lies in the southeast corner," she said. "That would be near the music room, if my grandfather's plans were accurate." She turned the card in her hands as if it might reveal more by the angle. Briggs stood steady behind her chair, his expression set in granite patience. Ellen, sleeves rolled, had already fetched another lamp. We made our way down the corridor, the portraits lining the walls watching in silence. The music room had not been played in 4 years. The piano beneath its sheet looked like a sleeping beast. Dust motes spun in the lamplight. At first glance, nothing seemed remarkable. Then Ellen pointed to a panel of wainscoting along the far wall. "Look," she said, "the carving here is deeper than the rest." Indeed, a small square had been etched faintly into the panel, almost hidden by varnish. I pressed my fingers against it. The panel shifted with a dry creak, revealing a recess just large enough for a small book. The volume inside was wrapped in cloth, its leather cover cracked but intact. Lady Whitestone drew a steady breath as I set it on the table. The book opened to reveal pages filled not with music but with numbers columns, balances, and names written in a brisk hand. "An account ledger," she murmured. "These are from a time when trade along the coast was less than honest. He must have hidden them away to keep them safe." Briggs frowned at the page. "Some of these names I know. Families still here in White." He closed the book gently, his jaw tight. "Best it remain with you, my lady. Old debts are not worth stirring." Lady Whitestone agreed, tying the ledger with fresh ribbon and placing it beside the chest. "The treasure is not only jewels," she said quietly. "It is knowledge. Records, stories, and truths we forgot." But the compass card suggested more. On the back of the ledger, scribbled faintly, was another symbol, a tree with wide branches. Ellen was the first to notice it. "That must be the courtyard oak," she said. "My grandmother always said it was planted as a marker." We gathered shawls and coats and stepped into the courtyard, where the mist thickened and the tree stood like a sentinel. The oak's roots pressed through flagstones, ancient and sure. We circled it in the dim glow of the lanterns. At the base, a stone looked newer than the rest, as if replaced within the last century. Briggs tapped it with his boot. "This one rings different." Together we pried it free. Beneath lay not earth but a hollow lined with slate. Inside rested a small tin box, sealed tight. The box opened with a stubborn groan, revealing papers folded neatly, maps of the coastline, notes on tides, and letters describing secret anchorages along the shore spilled out. Lady Whitestone traced her finger over one drawing of hidden coves. "He was not only hiding gold," she said softly. "He was guarding Whitestone itself. These charts would have been priceless to smugglers or to the crown." Her eyes shone with both pride and awe, and he trusted the house to keep them safe. Among the maps lay a final folded slip of paper. It bore a simple sketch, the outline of a staircase, with a mark at the base. Ellen leaned closer. "That looks like the servants' stair behind the pantry. I've polished those steps often enough to know." Briggs gave a short nod. "Then that is where we go next." We returned indoors, the oak watching us retreat. The fog pressed thicker, yet inside the manor, the air was alight with purpose. The chest, the ledger, the tin box, each artifact laid in a row, spoke of a story carefully planned. Lady Whitestone stood before them, her voice steady. "This is no mere hunt for treasure. It is a journey he meant us to take, step by step." As the clock chimed midnight, we lit fresh lamps. The manor, once heavy with silence, seemed to lean forward with us, eager to reveal what else its walls remembered. The next clue waited below. The house had the hush of a chapel when we left the library for the back passages. Lamps in hand, we passed the kitchen and paused at the pantry, where flour sacks stood in neat ranks and jars of jam glowed like bottled summer. Behind the spice cabinet was a narrow door, its paint older than memory. Ellen touched it gently. "The servants stare," she said. "It breathes when the wind comes off the sea." The door yielded with a sigh, and a cool draft met us. The stair curved tightly downward, each step worn by countless feet. Lady Whitestone raised her lamp. "No one goes alone," she repeated, and we descended single file. Halfway down, a faint rustle stirred below. At a landing we found a shelf set into the brick. Upon it lay a packet wrapped in oilcloth, tied with string. Inside was a slim notebook and a ribbon threaded with 3 brass tokens. On the first page, in the same neat hand as the maps, were the words, "Aster." "For the one who keeps patience." A sketch of the stair followed, with a mark at the base and 3 circles labeled flour, sugar, salt. We finished the stair and entered a plain hall of brick, the kitchen wall on one side, the pantry on the other. The floorboards here were honest timber, worn and creaking softly. I counted 5 paces, then pressed my heel. The board gave a hollow reply. Briggs slipped a blade along the seam and lifted it. Inside lay 3 paper parcels, labeled like the tokens. But the parcels held secrets. Letters folded thin, a brass stamp with the Whitestone W and anchor, and a key wrapped in cloth. Its bow was shaped like a compass rose. Lady Whitestone touched it reverently. Grandfather never wasted a symbol. We tried the 13th board, as noted in the notebook. It held a small wooden whistle and a list of ships. I covered and uncovered the whistle's holes in the order of the numbers 5, 8, 13. The pantry door gave a faint shudder, and the spice cabinet eased forward. Behind it lay a recess in the brick with 3 iron pegs. I slipped the brass tokens onto the pegs in the order flour, sugar, salt. The third clicked, and a narrow panel slid aside. A stair went down again, deeper into the wall. The air grew cooler, touched with dust. At the bottom was an iron-plated door, not large but strong. Above the handle was a tiny compass rose. The new key fit. I paused, recalling the margin note in the notebook. Asterisk, light, then turn. If smoke does not move, wait. We set our lamps down. The flames leaned toward a seam in the bricks, showing safe air. I turned the key, and the door swung open. We stepped into a chamber beneath low arches. The air was dry, and shelves lined the walls. On them lay rolled charts in oilskin, boxes of ledger paper, crates stamped with crowns, and a canvas bundle tied with rope. A brass plate on the wall read, asterisk, asterisk for the use of the house in lean years. Asterisk, asterisk. Lady Whitestone pressed her hand to the plate, her eyes bright. "He prepared for us," she whispered. "He thought of everything." We cut the rope on the canvas. Inside lay a sextant, a spyglass, and a journal. The journal opened easily, its pages still crisp. In the same careful hand, we read, asterisk, trust the land under the cliff. It answers to 2 tides. A sketch showed the manor above, the shoreline below, and a dotted line angled between them. "The tunnels," Briggs said quietly. "They lead to the sea." We stood still, listening to the draft that breathed faintly from deeper within. The compass key felt cool in my hand. Lady Whitestone straightened, her voice calm but sure. "Then, our search is not finished." He meant us to follow. We gathered the journal and closed the iron door behind us. The stair ahead curved further down, promising more secrets. The manor seemed to lean forward, eager to show us what it had guarded all these years. The stair beyond the iron door curved deeper, narrow as a well shaft yet steady underfoot. Our lamps cast trembling shadows across stone old enough to taste of salt. The draft we had felt above grew stronger with each step, until the air seemed to pulse faintly, as though the manor itself were breathing. At the bottom, the stair gave onto a passage cut from rock. The ceiling arched just high enough for Briggs to stand upright. Water dripped ahead, rhythmic as a clock. Ellen drew her shawl tighter but held the lamp firm. "This is older than the house," she whispered. "Older even than the village." Lady Whitestone raised her lamp toward the walls. Carved into the stone were circles, crosses, and compass roses, some nearly worn smooth. Beside one circle, an arrow pointed forward. Another Marcan anchor had been etched deep. "Seafarers' signs," she said softly. "Grandfather borrowed what was already here." The tunnel forked after 30 paces. To the left, the floor dipped toward water. To the right, the air smelled faintly of smoke. We chose right, and soon found blackened stone. A lantern hook still clung to the wall. Beneath it lay pottery shards and the heel of a boot. "Smugglers," Briggs murmured. "They used these ways before us." Farther on, we reached a chamber no larger than the pantry above. Its roof opened into a dome where lichen glowed faintly. On the floor stood a chest too rotten to resist. Inside lay scraps of cloth, rusted cutlery, and one small silver coin. Lady Whitestone turned it over. A clue left, or a decoy? A second passage led on. This one was marked by a compass rose pointing down. The notebook's words returned. Asterisk, trust the land under the cliff. It answers to 2 tides. Asterisk. We followed, the floor sloping gently. Soon the sound of the sea was clear, not just water, but the hush and draw of waves. The passage ended in a heavy oak door, bound with iron. Its bolt slid free, and beyond lay a cavern carved by sea and time. The tide had filled it halfway. Waves whispered in and out. Moonlight glimmered through a jagged crack in the cliffside. We stood on a ledge above the water. Along the wall were 3 niches, bricked up but marked with initials, W.H. and C. Family, Lady Whitestone said. Whitestone, Harrow, Channing. Briggs loosened bricks from the first niche. Inside was a sealed jar of glass. Papers inside spoke of agreements, shares in ships, loans, and debts. Proof of trust, Lady Whitestone said. The second niche held a wooden box. Inside were navigational tools, a compass, a ruler, and charts of the channel with secret anchorages. Lifelines, Ellen said. For sailors or smugglers. The third niche proved hardest. Inside was a carved oak casket. Within lay gemstones, topaz, and a sapphire. Lady Whitestone replaced it gently. He left proof of wealth, proof of bonds, and proof of craft. 3 pillars for a house to stand on. But the cavern held one more secret. At the far end, above the tide line, a narrow opening led deeper still. Around it was carved, the compass rose once more, with 2 arrows, one upward, faint, almost rubbed away, the other down, cut sharp and recent. Briggs tested the opening with his lantern. The air moved fresh. Another passage, he said. This one runs back toward the house. Lower still. Lady Whitestone folded the notebook.com, though her eyes shone. Then we are not finished. He wished us to seek further. We replaced the stones as best we could, and closed the oak door against the tide. Our lamps lit the narrow way down into the cliff. The manor above stood silent, yet I felt it listening, waiting for us to follow its heartbeat into the earth. The passage sloped downward, narrow and cool. Our lamps threw long shadows that wavered across the rough stone. The air smelled of chalk and iron, a reminder that we were far below the manor's elegant rooms. The notebook's sketch had shown this way, leading toward the base of the cliff, and we followed in silence. After some distance, the tunnel widened into a chamber shaped like a hexagon. At its center stood a stone table, plain but deliberate, as if cut for councils. Dust lay thick on its surface, yet no cobwebs hung here. Lady Whitestone brushed the dust aside with her gloved hand. Beneath, carved into the slab, was a compass rose, surrounded by a ring of letters. Some letters had faint notches above them, as though marking a code. Briggs held the lamp close. A cipher wheel, he muttered, set to hide words in plain sight. Beside the rose were numbers scratched faintly, 2, 5, 13. Ellen recalled the sequence from the pantry. The old trinity again. Lady Whitestone smiled faintly. Grandfather did love his patterns. We tested the letters, pressing each in turn. To our surprise, the stone segments gave slightly beneath the pressure, clicking into place. When the sequence the 5th of February 13 was entered, a section of wall slid back, revealing a smaller room beyond. Dust swirled in the lamplight as we stepped through. This hidden study was lined with shelves, but not of books. Instead, ledgers filled every space, their spines marked only with numbers. A desk stood against the far wall, its surface orderly even after years of stillness. Upon it rested a brass inkwell and a quill trimmed neatly, as though waiting. Lady Whitestone lifted the top ledger. Inside were pages filled with coded writing, symbols, dots, and lines marching like an unknown language. He meant to guard his records, she said softly, but he also meant someone patient might read them. In a drawer she found a slip of parchment with the same cipher rows repeated, this time with a key. A matched 2, B2, C2. With effort we decoded the first line, asterisk ships pledged, debts forgiven, promises kept. Asterisk, Briggs frowned. These are no ordinary accounts. They are favors, alliances, the hidden spine of a house. Ellen nodded. Perhaps the true treasure is not jewels at all, but trust written down. We carried 3 ledgers to the table and laid them open. The writing recorded names we knew from Whitestone streets, chandlers, grocers, sailors, even clergy. Each line paired with symbols of coin or cargo, but the margin often read asterisk, returned or settled. He kept record, not only of what was owed him, Lady Whitestone said, her eyes bright, but of what he forgave. In the corner stood a chest, smaller than the one upstairs. Inside were bundles of letters tied with faded cord. The wax seals bore crests of families still known in the county. Ellen traced one gently. He held their secrets safe. Briggs closed the lid firmly. Secrets have teeth, even old ones. The chamber had one more feature, a narrow slit in the far wall, cut like a window. Cold air seeped through, carrying the steady roar of the sea. We leaned close. Far below, waves crashed against rocks, unseen but felt. The slit, however, was not only for air. On the stone ledge lay a brass tube capped at both ends. We eased it free and opened it. Inside was a rolled chart of Whitestone's coast, but not as sailors usually drew it. This one was overlaid with circles and dotted lines, each marked with initials. At the bottom was a single note, asterisk. The third tied answers in silence. Lady Whitestone's hands trembled slightly as she spread the chart on the desk. Another clue, she whispered. One more step he meant us to take. She folded it carefully and set it atop the ledgers. We lingered in the study a moment longer, the weight of its records pressing around us. Then we returned to the hexagonal chamber and closed the panel behind. The compass rose on the stone table seemed to glow faintly in the lamplight, its notches waiting for patient eyes. The next path lies by the sea itself, Lady Whitestone said. We must go lower still. Her voice carried both determination and awe, as if she walked not just into her family's past, but into its promise. We gathered our lamps and stepped once more into the sloping tunnel. The sound of the waves grew clearer, the air cooler. Behind us, the hidden study held its secrets in silence. The quill still poised above the inkwell as though ready to continue the record when we returned. The tunnel bent sharply after the hidden study, its floor sloping as if eager to meet the sea. Our lamps lit jagged stone, and the air cooled until breath hung faintly before us. Each step echoed against the walls, the sound rolling ahead like scouts. Somewhere beyond, waves struck rock with a muffled thunder. We reached a landing where the passage opened into a broad chamber. The ceiling dripped, and pools mirrored the lamplight. In the center stood a stone arch, freestanding, as if built not to support, but to signify. Its keystone bore, the compass rose again, sharper than before. Carved along its curve were words, Hold fast when tide is high, wait when tide is low. Lady Whitestone traced the letters. Grandfather knew these tides as one knows ours. Ellen knelt by the pools. See, the water rises, then drains. 2 tides, like the journal said. Briggs placed his hand on the arch. It's a gate, not in form, but meaning. Beyond, the passage narrowed, forcing us single file. The walls bore notches, some grouped in 13. The number had followed us from pantry to cipher. On the 13th step, Briggs pressed with his boot. The stone sank slightly. A grinding sound followed. Ahead, part of the wall slid inward, opening a space tall enough to enter. Within lay another chamber, smaller but ordered. Shelves lined the walls, their bundles sealed in waxed cloth. One held chisels, files, and a hammer. Another, coils of rope and a lantern blackened with soot. Provisions, Ellen said. He stocked this place for travelers. At the far wall stood a broad iron door, streaked with rust, yet strong. At its center was the compass rose, crossed with 2 keys. Lady Whitestone withdrew the compass bow key, but it was too small. Another key, she said. In a crate we found 2 boxes. One held a key shaped like a star, the other a crescent. Their bows matched the symbols on the door. Briggs turned them side by side. 2 to open as 1. We fitted both keys. The mechanism turned with a deep click. The door swung open, sending a rush of cold air across our faces. Beyond lay a stair, spiraling down into the cliff. Water murmured faintly below, and the scent of brine sharpened. We descended. The stair ended in a cavern, vast as a cathedral. The tide surged in through an opening at the far side. On a ledge above the water stood a stone platform. Upon it rested a chest bound in iron bands, larger than any yet found. Beside it lay fragments of barrels, rope, and anchors. We approached. The chest was chained, the links thick. On the chain hung a brass tag, asterisk, not for gold alone. Asterisk. Lady Whitestone read it softly. He meant this for those who understood. Nearby stood a stone plinth with 3 bowls. Above them, carved into the wall, was the Trinity once more: flour, sugar, salt. Ellen gasped from her pocket. She produced the brass discs. We placed them carefully into the bowls. The ground vibrated faintly. The chains slackened and fell. Inside the chest were not jewels but documents sealed in oilskin, a brass astrolabe, and a pouch of foreign coins. Lady Whitestone lifted one packet. "Letters from merchants," she whispered. "Contracts, alliances, promises, wealth of another kind." As we examined the contents, Briggs's lamp flickered. A draft stirred through the cavern, carrying the roar of the sea. At the far wall, behind the chest, another opening yawned low and narrow. Its frame bore no compass rose, only a single chiseled line pointing forward. Lady Whitestone's eyes shone in the wavering light. One more passage. One more secret. She set her hand upon the chest. We must see where it leads. We gathered our lamps and turned toward the dark mouth of the passage, the sound of waves urging us onward. The manor above was far away now, yet its secret heart beat louder with every step. The narrow passage behind the cavern chest forced us to stoop, our lamps brushing the stone overhead. The air was drier here, the draft steady, carrying with it the faint scent of earth rather than sea. The walls bore no carvings, only tool marks, as though this section had been cut with purpose rather than inherited from smugglers. We pressed on, the sound of the surf fading behind us. After what felt like many turns, the passage opened into a chamber circular and tall. The ceiling rose into a dome blackened with soot, though no fire had burned here in years. At the center stood a stone pedestal, waist-high, its surface engraved with the compass rose yet again. This time its arrows pointed not only north, south, east, and west, but inward as well, toward a tiny circle at its heart. Lady Whitestone placed her hand upon the circle. The stone pressed inward with a click. Around the pedestal, 4 sections of floor shifted, revealing compartments like drawers sliding open. Inside, each lay objects carefully wrapped. We unrolled the first to reveal parchment sheets filled with diagrams, mechanical drawings of locks, hinges, and waterworks. Designs, Briggs muttered. Ingenious. He was an engineer of secrets. The second drawer held small boxes of coins, some English, some foreign, stamped with monarchs long gone. A modest fortune, though not compared to the legends. The third contained jewels, rings, brooches, a necklace of pearls strung so fine they shimmered like mist. Ellen caught her breath, but replaced them gently. Too lovely to linger in the dark, she whispered. The final drawer held a bundle of letters tied with scarlet ribbon. Their seals bore crests of noble houses. Lady Whitestone opened one carefully. They are confessions, she said quietly. Pledges, bargains, mistakes admitted. He kept them hidden to protect reputations or to ensure loyalty. She closed it with reverence. Power lies not only in wealth, but in what one chooses not to reveal. Yet the chamber held more. Against the far wall stood a door of oak bound with brass, smaller than the others. Above it was carved not a compass rose but a phrase, asterisk, to those who wait with patience the heart shall open. The compass bow key fit neatly. I turned it, and the door swung inward. We entered a narrow alcove. At its end rested a chest no larger than a traveling trunk. It bore no chains, no symbols, only a simple lock. Lady Whitestone knelt before it, her lamp steady. This must be it, she said. The heart. Briggs produced the crescent key and turned it. The lock yielded easily. Inside the chest were not coins or gems, but books, journals bound in leather, each labeled by year. Lady Whitestone opened the first. It was her grandfather's hand, neat and calm. The pages told of storms weathered, trade secured, and friends aided. Margins held notes of gratitude, promises, and the quiet pride of a man who had hidden not for greed, but for care. Ellen read a passage aloud. Asterisk. Wealth will be measured in those who endure after me. Let this house remember its duty. When lean years return. She folded the page gently. It is treasure indeed, she said. But treasure of thought, not coin. Briggs lifted another journal. Within were sketches of Whitestone village, cottages, the church, the harbor. Notes, detailed repairs, loans given, wages advanced. He built the town as much as the manor, Briggs said. Every stone above owes to what he saved down here. Lady Whitestone closed the journals with trembling hands. Her voice was steady, though filled with emotion. The greatest secret was never gold. It was his wish that Whitestone endured, that we remember kindness weighs more than jewels. We carried the journals back to the circular chamber, setting them upon the pedestal. Around us, the dome caught our lamplight and shimmered faintly as if the soot itself glowed. The house above seemed to rest easier, its heartbeat gentler now that its truest secret had been spoken aloud. But the journey was not finished. Another narrow slit in the stone promised a way upward, toward the manor itself. Lady Whitestone straightened, eyes bright with resolve. We will bring these back to the light. He meant them to be read. And with lamps in hand, we turned toward the final ascent. The final passage sloped upward, its stone cut, narrow but clean. Our lamps flickered, drawing long shadows ahead. Each step felt lighter, though the weight of what we carried, ledgers, journals, and charts, was heavier than gold. The air changed as we climbed. The chill of the cavern gave way to warmth, and soon the smell of timber and plaster returned. We were rising back toward the house. At last the stair ended behind a panel of oak. Ellen pressed against it, and it swung open into the manor's chapel. The small room, unused for years, smelled faintly of candle wax and cedar. Dust clung to pews, but the stained glass windows still glowed with moonlight. Lady Whitestone set the journals gently upon the altar, as though returning them to a rightful place. For a long moment, we stood in silence, the only sound the steady tick of the chapel clock. When at last she spoke, Her voice carried both pride and gravity. My grandfather's treasure was not meant for vaults or crowns. He left it for us, to remind us that a house is strongest when it holds not only wealth, but memory, kindness, and resolve. She placed her hand on the top journal. These are his true legacy. We returned to the library, laying the discoveries in order. The first chest with its pearls and coins, the oak casket with gemstones, the contracts from the cavern, the ciphered ledgers, the maps of hidden anchorages, and finally, the journals. Spread across the table, they formed not a hoard but a storia, life's work disguised as myth, waiting patiently until trust was ready to find it. Ellen lit the fire, and its glow filled the room. She looked at the spread and said softly, "Every piece had its place." He left us not riddles, but instructions and care. Briggs nodded, and ensured no one greedy would take it by chance. Lady Whitestone poured tea, her hands steadier than when the night began. The manor will stand, not on stone alone, but on this record of purpose. The village, too. If we share these truths, Whitestone itself gains strength. She raised her cup, to endurance. We echoed her, and the fire crackled as though in agreement. As the night waned, we carefully stored each item. The jewels were placed in velvet boxes, the charts in dry cases, the journals wrapped in cloth. They would be studied in daylight, but for now the house seemed content, its secrets no longer pressing against the walls. The fog outside lifted, leaving stars clear above the cliffs. From the window, we could see the sea, calm now, reflecting silver light. Before we parted, Lady Whitestone stood by the great fireplace where the search had begun. "The manor listened tonight," she said, voice low. "It tested us with patience, rewarded us with truth, and reminded us that treasure is not only what glitters, but what guides." She looked toward the portraits on the wall. "I think he would be satisfied." We left the library quietly, lamps dimmed. The manor lay in restful silence, as though its long-hidden heart had been eased. I paused at the door to glance back. The journals on the altar, the coins in their chest, the charts folded neatly, all seemed to glow faintly in the firelight, each a thread in the tapestry of a family's story. Outside, the first light of dawn touched the horizon. The cliffs of Whitestone shone pale, the tide pulling back to reveal wet sand and rocks glistening like jewels. The village chimneys stirred with smoke, unaware that above them, secrets had been lifted from shadow into care. We breathed the salt air deeply. The night had given us its story, and the sea seemed to sigh in approval. Thus ended the search, not with gold spilling across a table, but with understanding carried in quiet hearts. Whitestone Manor stood tall against the morning, its stones holding firm, its windows bright, its legacy secure.